I Choose Life Africa, and we were visiting people living with HIV and AIDS and those also affected by the pandemic. My experience was quite shocking and traumatizing in that social amenities as simple as sanitation in the slums are not looked into, yet we have a government that ought to be doing that. And what really shocked me was that there was a bridge to cross to the other side of the slum, and it's not a river. The bridge was not to bridge it to a river. It was because there was sewage running over, and it had covered a vast area. So really that got me thinking, what are our leaders doing about proper sanitation in the slums? To me that is an inequality, because if you go to another urban side of town or a high-rise side of town, really the sanitation is not like that. It's proper, the proper sewerage functionalities of the sewers are very different from what is in the slums. To educate the people about the gap between the rich and the poor, one is that really awareness has to be created from the people living in the slums and the people living in the city. So, or rather in the upper class part of the city. So the people in the slum should come up and say this is the kind of life we're living, and probably say we're not comfortable with it. The people in the upper part of the town should come up and say, okay, we are living in such kind of an environment. However, our brothers on the other side are living in such kind of an environment. Therefore, we can come up together and really create an awareness even to our leaders, the people who are at the powers of resource distribution. Create an awareness and let's...
This theme is social inequalities. And the motto is pamoja tumalize tofauti. Ati nini? Pamoja tumalize, pamoja tumalize.
And there are many people. During the break, I think we just put all the pictures on the wall so you can have a look at them all like during the break. And right now I think they're going to present just a couple of them.
You know, this man, he cannot work without showing his talent. So I would like the government to help the guys with good talent to show them anyway, and they can create jobs. By here we have kazi kwa vijana.
Inequality. When everybody has given and we have worked hard to come up with what we have created here, I cannot support it's not an easy job. A gap between the poor and the rich when every day. How? Because I'm not my brother's keeper. The rich will always move for the rich. They don't have any business with the poor. And one, a poor government tends to put skills on her head to interfere with the peace of the rich. You get that? You get that? Yeah? You're either this away or you're being others. This is the time to wake up, open your eyes, let's open our eyes and see what we can do for ourselves. If it is ask for help, identify that person who you can improve. Even if you need to go for the expensive card training, it doesn't matter. Where is your will? The other thing is the comfort zone. We feel somehow we don't want to work
welcome to this youth forum. It's very instrumental in changing the way youth relate, especially in terms of social inequalities, and I'm happy to be part of it and help in any way that I can. Okay, what I believe to be social inequality is a denial of one part of society or another of the economic, social, political, cultural opportunities that it should have as a birthright, as individuals and as groups, to improve themselves and develop themselves as individuals and as groups, and thus creating a barrier between the people who have and the people who don't. That's how I understand social inequality. I think the first main cause is the belief that some people are better than others. That is something that we need to deconstruct in our minds. Secondly is bad policy, in the sense that where a government does not plan for certain sections of its population or certain demographic groups like the youth or elderly people or children, that leaves them to fall through the cracks of a society that develops economically, politically, socially, all those ways. And that's how social inequality is caused, by bad policy, especially in places that are underprivileged. I think social inequality is tackled by forming groups that have the same social interest, same economic interest, therefore collating all the resources that they have to improve themselves faster than they would if they were individuals. You know that's what we're saying. You know, one finger doesn't scratch the, and I think it's really important for people to come together as groups and use their talents within these groups as individuals to improve themselves. My first experience when going to informal settlements in slums was very jarring, in the sense that for a long time I really didn't know how people live in slums. I know it seems ignorant of me as a Kenyan, not knowing how people live, especially as a Nairobian, not knowing how people live in Kibera or in Mathare or in other areas in Nairobi that are underprivileged. The way people live is just unacceptable, and the sadder part of this was that there are children there who grow up knowing no other life and knowing no other means to survive other than the means that they've been taught in these areas by people who also live through the same themselves. I think it's unfortunate that there's a generation, in their hundreds and thousands and millions, of young people who do not have the advantages that they should have because of the things that I spoke about earlier. It is embarrassing and shameful for a country to allow its youth, the generation that's going to take the reins of power over from this current generation or the next generation, to live in such squalor and expect them to be the ones to drive this country into economic, social, political prosperity. It's really unfair. I'd say, unfortunately, this is in part true.